When you think about what wins a war, your mind probably jumps to tanks, battleships, maybe fighter jets. But what if I told you that one of the most important pieces of Allied technology in World War II wasn't a weapon at all? What if it was just a bridge? Today, we're diving into an engineering marvel so critical that some of the highest-ranking commanders said the war couldn't have been won without it.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. That's a direct quote from Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery. We're talking one of the top Allied commanders of the entire war. Now, a statement like that, it's pretty powerful, right? It really begs the question, how on earth could a humble bridge be that important? Well, to really get it, you have to picture the situation in Europe during the war. The Allies were pushing forward, but they kept running into the same infuriating problem over and over again, one that was bringing their entire advance to a grinding halt.
Just imagine it for a second. Your army has momentum, you're gaining ground, you're on a roll, and then, bam, you hit a river. And the bridge that was supposed to be there, it's been blown to bits by the retreating enemy. Suddenly, everything, your tanks, your supply trucks, your troops, just stops. This wasn't a rare thing. It was happening constantly, creating this massive logistical nightmare.
And this right here, this slide, just nails the problem they were facing. The bridges they could build were all wrong. They were either way too complicated, needing heavy cranes and weeks of construction time you just don't have in a war, or they were just flimsy pontoon bridges that would buckle under the weight of a heavy tank. What they needed, what they desperately needed, was some kind of miracle. A bridge that was super strong but could also be thrown up in a huge hurry by regular soldiers.
And sometimes out of that kind of desperation comes sheer brilliance. This was one of those times.
The guy who cracked the code wasn't a famous general. He was a civil engineer, a man named Donald Bailey, working for the British War Office. And his idea wasn't some high-tech, futuristic gadget. No, its genius was in just how unbelievably simple it was.
The magic word here is modularity. The best way to think about it is like a giant industrial-strength Lego set. Instead of designing and building a unique bridge for every single river, Bailey designed a system of standardized, interchangeable parts that you could snap together in all sorts of different ways.
And this is where it gets really clever. Every single steel panel was exactly the same. They were all connected with simple metal pins that you could just hammer into place, and this is the crucial part. Each individual piece was light enough that a small group of soldiers could carry it. That meant you didn't need any cranes or heavy machinery, which was an absolute game changer on the front lines.
Okay, so the idea sounds amazing on paper, right? But how did it actually work in the chaos of a battlefield? Let's walk through how they actually put this thing together.
The process itself was just as smart as the parts. First, the engineers would build the bridge on their side of the river, safely away from enemy fire. Then, they'd bolt on this lightweight skeleton frame called a launching nose. Finally, the whole thing was just pushed out over the gap on rollers until the nose hit the other side. The genius here is that the soldiers building it were never dangerously exposed over the water. It was incredible.
And don't let the whole Lego set idea fool you. These things were unbelievably tough. They were made from high-strength steel. And if you had a really heavy tank to get across, no problem. You didn't need a new bridge. You just added more panels next to or on top of the existing ones. They called it doubling or tripling up. And the proof of how well they were built? A ton of these temporary bridges are still standing and being used today.
I mean, just pause and think about that for a second. A bridge built by a handful of guys with no cranes, probably in just a few hours, was strong enough to drive a 30-ton tank over it. That's not just an improvement, that's a whole new ballgame. The life story of this bridge is just amazing. It first showed up in 1941, and the impact was immediate. All through the war, it was the key to keeping Allied armies moving and supplied. But the story didn't end in 1945. After the war, these so-called temporary bridges just stayed. They became permanent fixtures all over the world. And even today, they're one of the first things engineers reach for after a flood or an earthquake.
Now, like any great piece of engineering, the Bailey Bridge wasn't perfect. It was a masterclass in brilliant trade-offs, designed for a very specific job.
To get that incredible speed and flexibility, some compromises had to be made. The pluses were obviously huge. Crazy fast to build, you could make it any length you needed, and you could even take it apart and use it again somewhere else. But it had its downsides. It took a lot of manpower to build, and wow, they were noisy. When a tank rolled over one, you could hear it for miles. And, well, let's be honest, it was never going to win a beauty contest. This was pure 100% function over form. So, when you look at those trade-offs, it's pretty clear this was a wartime tool. But that begs the question, why are we still talking about it? Why does this 80-year-old design still matter so much?
More than 80 years, for more than 8 decades, this design has just kept on working. From the battlefields of Europe to modern-day disaster zones across the globe, the Bailey Bridge has been this quiet, unsung hero of engineering.
It's really survived far beyond its original purpose. It isn't just a relic in a museum, it's a living, breathing tool. It's become this global symbol of what happens when you solve a really hard problem with a solution that's simple, smart, and tough as nails.
And that makes you wonder, doesn't it? In our super high-tech world, with all of our computers and advanced materials, how can a design from the 1940s, something so fundamentally basic, still be so essential? I think the answer is right there in its design. The Bailey Bridge lasts because it teaches us a timeless lesson. Sometimes, when you're staring down a huge, complicated problem, the most powerful, the most effective, and the most enduring answer is the simple one.